Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Highway and the Freeway ball python complexes. And let me tell you, if you're getting into breeding ball pythons and you're thinking about going after the Highway or the Freeway, it's a little bit difficult to wrap your head around the genetics. So really what it is, if you're thinking about ball pythons and genetics, typically you'll think of dominant or codominant or recessive. And in this case, it is actually what we call allelic, which is completely different. Allelic is actually two copies of different genes residing on the same location in the genetics. So if you think about like an albino has two copies of the albino gene, if you can actually see the visual albino, if it just has one copy, it'll look like this, like a normal or classic ball python, and you really can't tell that it has one copy of the gene. And it's kind of the same way. These complexes, they all have yellow belly in the mix. And yellow belly almost looks like a normal ball python, and the other gene in there is either gravel or asphalt. And let me tell you, if you breed one of the Highway or Freeways to a normal like this, all the babies come out pretty much looking normal. As a matter of fact, you can't tell which ones are yellow belly and which ones are gravel or yellow belly asphalt. So really the difference is the Freeway is the yellow belly asphalt. And that was developed in Canada. And the Highway is the yellow belly gravel, which is developed here in the United States. And I'm thinking they're pretty much almost the same thing, but they're just different lines. And you can definitely tell when you start mixing other genes into the mix that there's definitely a difference between the Highway and the Freeway. It's almost like when we discovered the coral glow and two different people discovered it. One called it banana, one called it coral glow. Come to find out it was the same thing. Well, this is almost the same. They're almost exactly the same, but you start mixing genes in and you can definitely tell they're different. And I actually don't have any Highway or Freeway stuff in my collection here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you Morph Market and pull up a few snakes on there, and I'll show you kind of the standalone morphs, some of the stuff you can mix in, some of the potential of those snakes. And really once you start adding genes, it really starts popping and it gets really crazy. And then I want to show you really the genetic diversity within the Highway and the Freeway complexes. And I'm convinced that there are different lines of yellow belly, different lines of different gravel, and different lines of asphalt. So we have pretty much the distinction between the gravel and the asphalt that differentiates the different complexes, but I think there are actually differences within those that even further differentiate. So for example, if you had a whole bunch of Highways from all these different breeders and you put them all side by side, they would actually all look a little bit different. And let me tell you, if you're thinking about getting into the project, you really need to look at the parents and what the potential is, what the combinations look like as far as mixing those genes in there. Because, I think there's a lot of really subdivisions within those snakes that can really make a big difference. And we don't really distinguish between those different lines and kind of mix them all together. And you'll see once I'm going through the images, you'll look at, some Highways all side by side, and some of them are really different. So let's jump over on the computer and check those out. Okay, so this is morphmarket.com. This is pretty much where everyone posts their snakes for sale. There are tens of thousands of ball pythons on here that are for sale and sold. And I just kind of want to run you through some of these examples. This happens to be a Freeway, which is the yellow belly asphalt. And to me, I think, if I was getting into a project, I would probably lean towards getting into the Freeway project. It tends to be a little more expensive, but it seems like it's a little more contrasty where the colors just pop a lot more. This one actually sold for $995, so there's still quite a bit of money in this. These really hold their value over the long term. I mean, these are pretty much, since I've been getting into ball pythons, probably 5 or 6 years, these haven't really come down in price that much, and I think it's because of the difficulty of, mixing mixing the asphalt and the yellow belly together. So if you look at this one and compare it to some of these other ones, I just pulled up a few freeways. This is another freeway. You can tell this one, you know, almost kind of has this garter snake kind of look to it, and it has kind of more of an electric kind of a pattern here on the side. Here is another freeway. This is listed as an insane pattern. You can tell the patterns are really interesting. This one has shorter little dotted lines, and I'm thinking they're calling them highways and freeways because it almost looks like the line down the middle of the road, the little dotted yellow line in the middle of the road, which is kind of interesting. And here's another one. This is a freeway. Some of them are more washed out, some of them are a lot brighter, and I think it really depends on the specific lines of the freeway. Here's another one. This one is really intense, a really intense yellow. This one is interesting too because it doesn't really have the lines down the middle like a freeway. This, you know, to me this almost looks like a super asphalt, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But the super asphalt looks really close to the freeways. And here's an example of when you mix in the pastel, and look at how intense the pastel just really pops out the colors. This one's kind of unusual because this specific line, I think there's different lines of pastel, different lines of yellow belly, different lines of asphalt, and you mix all three together and it's kind of unexpected as far as what you're going to get. It's not the same across the board. This one seems to have a lot more yellow in the snake, and compare that one to this one, which is exactly the same. This is a pastel freeway, so it's a pastel yellow belly asphalt. That one is exactly the same as this one, and look at how different those two snakes are. It is incredible. And here's one more pastel freeway. This one almost has more of an electric pattern down it. This is by far, hands down, one of my most favorite snakes. I mean, there's nothing that really looks like the pastel freeways. If I was getting into the project, I would definitely pick up a pastel freeway first as one of my first snakes. And this one, you know, if you're looking to getting into the project, this one sold a male in 2018 for $1,000. So you're still talking about, you know, a couple grand for a pair of pastel freeways. And then I kind of want to show you some of the potential of the freeways. So this is actually what they call a banana Mardi Gras. you take a freeway and you add an inchy, then they call it a Mardi Gras, and then you add banana on top, and look at how insane this snake looks. And this one's actually for sale. It's a female. If you're interested in buying it, it's actually $10,000. That is a ridiculous snake. I can't even believe it, and it's a little bit out of my price range at this point. But, you know, if you're really thinking about getting into projects and you have a lot of money to throw around, really getting some high-end stuff like this could really pay off big in the long run. Here's another one. It almost looks like the pastel freeway, but it has calico in it, which just kind of cleans it up and gives it an interesting look. Here is a pastel Enchi Orange Dream Freeway. So this is actually, let's see, a pastel Orange Dream Mardi Gras, because it has the Enchi and the asphalt and the yellow belly, and that is really an insane looking snake. This is another one. It looks like this one's for sale for $5,500. So you can tell these are really holding their value really well. Here's another one, an Orange Dream Spider Enchi Freeway. That one's pretty crazy. This one actually sold. It's a 2018 male for $4,000. That's a pretty much of a steal compared to, you know, what I've been seeing. It's got a lot of genes in there. I thought this one was kind of unique. This is just a GHI freeway, and GHI is the gotta have it gene, gotta have GHI, gotta have it. And usually GHIs really make the patterns really crazy. And on this one, it cleans it up, almost wipes out the sides, and almost turns it like a silver color. I thought that was really unexpected for a GHI, as far as kind of making some effects on that snake. So here, take a look at this. If you breed a freeway to a normal, this is what you get. you get a snake that looks completely normal and you can't tell if it's a yellow belly or an asphalt. So people always say this is yellow belly or asphalt, and it looks completely normal, which is pretty crazy. And these are still, you know, this is, you know, a couple $100 for an asphalt yellow belly. So even just your normal looking snakes are you know, selling pretty well for pretty high premium. So let's move on to the Highway. So everything from here was Freeway, which has the asphalt gene, and from here on will be Highway with the gravel instead of the asphalt. So this is what a Highway looks like, and you can tell it's definitely different. It's not as intense, not as bright. The stripe on the back's not as broken up. You can definitely tell it's a completely different snake. And I have a few examples here of a Highway. You can see they're a little bit more browned out compared to the Freeways. I haven't yet to see one that really looks like the Freeways is intense. Here is an example of a Highway with the clown, which is kind of interesting. I've never seen clown worked into any of these until today when I looked it up. This is a 2018, sold for $7,500. It's pretty incredible. And let's look at some other examples. This is a killer Highway pied. So it's a Highway. The killer means it has super pastel, and it is a pied, which is really interesting. I've never actually even seen anything like this before. This just posted in 2018. You can buy that snake for $3,500. I think it's pretty good for, you know, all the genes in there. This one looks pretty insane. This is a leopard pastel Highway. Look what the leopard does to the Highway. That is really insane. I would have never guessed that it would have done anything like that. That is crazy. This one is a pastel Highway. So you take a look at this, a pastel Highway compared to the pastel Freeways, and you can see it has a little bit more kind of dirty sides. It's not quite as clean, I would say, but it's still pretty impressive of a snake. Here is another pastel Highway. So you can see this one is, you kind of really have the differences between the difference. The pastel really brings out, I think it's the differences. I'm not sure if it's the differences in the yellow belly or the differences between kind of the shades of gray of the gravel. So you look at this one and you compare it to this one, they're exactly the same genes, but they look like completely different snakes, which is pretty amazing. So you can see something is going on even within the Highway as well as within the Freeway, where I think there's different lines within the lines that kind of differentiate, you know, the final result that you can expect on some of these combos. So let's move into the super gravel. So for example, if you bred a Freeway to a Freeway or a Highway to a Highway, so actually the gravel is in the Highway. So if you bred a Highway to a Highway, you would get a certain percentage of the babies, 2 copies of the genes with a gravel. And this is a super gravel. They're pretty rare. You don't see super gravels. And remember I was talking about the one that didn't really look like it had lines down the middle. It kind of had these little splotches. I can almost bet that that's a super gravel instead of the Highway or Freeway that we were looking at before. And these really command pretty high prices. This one is $5,000. So, you know, everybody's looking for the super gravels, because if you breed a super gravel with an ivory, the whole clutch comes out Highways. So it's a really powerful breeder, especially a male. You know, if you're looking for a whole clutch of Highways and you want one snake to breed with your super yellow bellies, then this is the one. Speaking of super yellow bellies, let's see. Well, let's go. The next one is a super asphalt. So this is essentially the same thing, except it is from the Freeway line with the asphalt instead of the gravel line with the Highway. It's a little bit confusing between the two of them. So this is a super asphalt. You breed this to a super yellow belly and you get 100% Freeways. This is sold for $4,500. So you can tell, you know, if you get into this project, it might cost you quite a bit up front, but you can make quite a bit of money. It's really good to get into. And then if we look over at the super yellow belly, it's essentially a white snake. And you know, with white snakes, you can have other stuff in the mix. This one happens to be a possible super orange dream, possible fire. You can have possible a whole bunch of stuff in there. You still get, if you get a yellow belly and a yellow belly, a super yellow belly, you get a white snake that pretty much masks all the other genes. And then at the very end, I kind of gave you a genetic calculator. So for example, if you were to breed a gravel yellow belly with a gravel yellow belly, so these are both highways, you breed a highway with a highway, you're not going to get all highways because it's allelic, it's kind of weird. You're going to get 25% ivories, which is the super yellow belly, the white snake. You're going to get half the clutch, 50% you're going to get highways, and then 25% you'll get super gravels, which is pretty incredible. And the thing I've seen, you know, a lot of people are selling, they're not 100% sure that they have a super gravel, so in that case what they'll do is they'll sell it at the highway price because they look really close. It's really hard to tell them apart, and you know, you're selling, instead of a $1,000 snake, you're selling a $4,000 or $5,000 snake, and you definitely want to be 100% sure that that is a super gravel, because you don't want to sell something that's not the right snake and then kind of run into problems when whoever buys it starts breeding it. So that's pretty much the whole rundown on all the asphalts and the gravels, the freeways and the highways. Okay, so there you have it. Now you are an expert when it comes to gravels, asphalts, highways, and freeways. It gets a little bit confusing, but once you get your head wrapped around it, let me tell you, it's a really neat project to get into. It's really, you can really bring in some good money if you're thinking about some investment quality animals. And if you're thinking about, you know, kind of getting something that's possible yellow belly, possible asphalt, I would definitely look back at the parents and see what the visual looks like before you invest in some of these lower end snakes, maybe to breed them together, so you kind of know the potential of what the final end product is as far as the visual morph. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.